Okay, so your Chimo greetings, Yedase. We thank everybody for joining in with us. For those who are unaware, I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehambata Akan. Odwirafo of Akwamu Amarukati Fimu, which is the Akwamu nation in North America, within Odwiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, meaning African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So tonight we want to go into a topic, very important topic, because this is one of the topics that we published an entire book on. So the title is ANKH and KARKARA, Kamiti, meaning Egyptian, but Kamiti, origin of yoga and chakra. So we published a book a number of years ago. It's one of the 31 books that I've published. All of the 31 books I've published are free downloads from our website. The book ANKH, the origin of the term yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. So we want to go into that book. We've also done an online course, a 6-week online course, going through this book in detail and a number of different, facets and so forth. But we want to go into detail about this to lay to rest this misinformation about the origin of the term yoga, the origin of the term kakra or chakra, and ritual practice, ascetic practice, and so forth. There's an ascetic tradition within Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African Ancestral Religion and Culture. The ancient priesthoods and priestesshoods of ancient Khanit and Kamit, for example, the Hemat Toro, we talked about that in one of our broadcasts, the wife of the divinity, high priestess, and so forth. The Hem Toro, the male priest, and so forth. You have the Cherep and Cherepit, the origin of the term Cherapi or Therapy, and so forth. That is a title of a class of priest or priestess. You have the Sem priest. You have the Wab and Wabet, the purification priest or priestess, and so forth. But there are ascetic traditions, dealing with discipline and fasting and celibacy and all these various things within our priesthood that existed in ancient Khanit and Kamit, Nubia and Egypt, and carried on into the various traditions we have today across West and Central and South and North Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa, and were carried with us into the Western Hemisphere when we were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the what we call the Musuo Kesie, the Akan term for the great perversity, the enslavement era. So even when we were forced into this area, this region, we continue to practice our ancestral religious traditions, many of us. So for example, those who were from the region of today's Ghana and Ivory Coast, who are Akan ethnicity, those of us who are Akan were forced into North America, and we continued Akan Ancestral Religion under the Akan term Undu, which is the term that came to be pronounced HOODOO and so forth. So the HOODOO man and HOODOO woman is the ancient Undu priest and priestess, and we still have ascetic traditions within the HOODOO tradition. The same is true of the Juju tradition in North America, which is Yoruba, the Voodoo tradition in North America, which is Ewe and Fong, the Wanga tradition in North America, which is Ovambo, the Ngangan tradition in North America, which is Fang. We have the Gola and Kisi tradition in North America, Gola and Geechee, which comes from the Gola and Kisi people of Sierra Leone and so forth. We have the various forms of root men, root women, root doctors, root workers, and so forth, but also those who become possessed, horses for the spirits and so forth, spirit mediums, healers, healeresses, those who lay hands, those who deal with medicine. So we've always maintained our priesthoods and priestesses, and that ascetic tradition has been part of that. This notion of what yoga is and chakras are and so forth, stolen by the whites and their offspring who invaded Northwest, quote unquote, India, learned about that and corrupted the traditions, but we brought that into India from ancient Afuraka, Afuraitkait, ancient Africa. And we prove it in our book, and we want to go through that right now. So, and what you see on the flyer, you see this is the cover of the book we're about to download. You see here the ANKH. This is one of the spellings of the term ANKH in the medutu Toro, misnomered Medu nature, the language of ancient Kemet, the divine words and so forth, divine symbols. We have a 2-part course on reading and writing, the medutu, the hieroglyphs and so forth. We have 31 books, but we have 40 online courses that are accessible as archives. So let's pull this up. Let me show you what we're dealing with. Okay, so first and foremost, before we go to that page, just so you can see what I just mentioned, our Akungwaswia page on our website is our institution page. When you scroll down, you'll see that we've taught 6-week online courses, 4-week online courses, 7-week online courses. In total, we've taught 40. This image here is a collage of all of those, the flyers for all of those 40 courses. As you scroll down, you will see that the original flyers for all the courses are there, and they're accessible as archives. So the 4-week courses are $10. The 6-week courses are, $15 and so forth. So you'll see that we have a number of different courses, including one of the courses where we, examined this book in detail. But let's go back. Now, this is our Nhoma page. The term Nhoma in the Akan language means book or publication. So this is our publications page. And this is where you can find all 31 of the books I have published, that I've written and published and so forth. The ebook versions you can download for free. You'll see the front covers of each one of the books as you scroll down. For example, the book Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa, and we show that the term Africa comes from Afuraka thousands of years ago in ancient Kamiti. It doesn't come from Europeans or anybody else. So we have a number of different publications, but one of them is the one we want to focus on tonight. And that is the ANKH, the origin of the term yoga, Karakasa, origin and nature of the chakra. So when you click on that image, it takes you to the page that we created specifically for the book. And we have a video where we did some analysis a while back. We talk about the book, but then you get down to the page and you can just click on the front cover and download the ebook version of the book. Now, the first thing that you're going to see is this ANKH, Onkwa. ANKH is the term for life in ancient Kemet, and that's the ANKH symbol. Onkwa, Onkwa is the term for life in the Akan language. We're showing the continuity of culture from ancient Khanit, Nubia and Kamit. When the white snow offspring invaded ancient Khanit and Kamit, Nubia and Egypt and so forth, a couple of thousand years ago, near the end of the dynastic period, some people migrated west, some people remained in that area, but some people migrated west. And they migrated west and reestablished their empire in the western part of the continent, the Akara Empire, or so-called Ghana Empire, over 2,000 years ago. And we continued carrying out our culture. About 1,000 years later, Muslim invasions, affected the ancient empire of Ghana and West Afuraka, Afuraitkait, West Africa. And some remained in that region. It's up where near Mali is right now. But some people migrated from that region further south towards the forest belt and reestablished the Akan Empire, Akara Empire, Akan Empire in the region of the forest belt and savanna regions in what is today's Ghana and Ivory Coast, in that region. So we reestablished the Akan Empire and so forth, continued to practice the culture. A few hundred years after that, some people in that region were taken from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And we ended up, many of us in North America. So this is how Akan people ended up in North America. And we continued Akan Ancestral Religion under the Akan term HOODOO, which means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. Undu also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. Undu also means to feel a presentiment or foreboding, to see what's unfolding in the spirit realm before it takes place, so you can make ritual adjustments. So the term Undu came to be pronounced HOODOO in North America. Now, just to give it a finer point on that, let me quickly switch over right quick. When you actually look on our YouTube page, when you scroll down to the documentary film section, hold on one second. I just want you to see the image right quick. Okay, we just recently, back in October, we released our second documentary film, HOODOO, Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. So you can watch that entire film on the HOODOO tradition for free, and we show that the HOODOO tradition is the Akan tradition. But we also show the connection between Akan people who migrated from ancient Khanit, which was a title of ancient Nubia, the Nubic land, the Khan land, first land, foremost land, land of the beginning, the Khan land, and the people of ancient Khanit, or the Akan people or Khanit people. And those Khan people and Nubian people moved west and reestablished the Khan Empire, Empire of Kana or Ghana and so forth. Moved further south, as we said, reestablished the Akan Empire in the forest belt, and then some of us were forced into North America. So, but this is the book, and you'll see that the Ankh term for life, this is an Ankh from the tomb of Tutankhamen, but then you also see the Akan Akuaba doll, so-called fertility doll, Onkwa, and so forth. And that is the same Ankh symbol that we never stop using. And we even use that as the HOODOO doll baby in North America in the same structure and so forth. It's an unbroken tradition with the same ritual capacity and definition and so forth, unbroken for thousands of years. So let's get into the text. Ankh, the origin of the term yoga. And the second part is Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. We had written two articles, one on the origin of the term yoga, and then the other article was Karakasa, origin and nature of the chakra. And then we combined both of those articles in this text to structure the book. So now, we talk about ancestral religion, the ritual incorporation of divine law, and the ritual restoration of divine balance in the beginning part. And we talk about our migrations around the continent and so forth. But we talk about ancestral shrines and deity shrines and sitting in the form of Nkom, spiritual communication with the divinities. But you'll see that the deities themselves, this is Ra, sitting in the boat of the Aten, the boat of the sun. He's in the form of the body of the male and the head of the falcon and so forth, sitting in the boat of the Aten, the sun and so forth. He has the Ankh. You see Tahuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, holding the Ankh as well. And you also see Het Heru, who's called Oshun in Yoruba, and Afi and Akan and so forth, holding the Ankh. You see Ma'at, holding the Ankh as well and so forth. So it's a talisman of life, and Ankh literally means life. But then you also see there's a funerary component. You see the divinity Anpu placing the Ankh to the nose of the deceased Per'a, or the deceased pharaoh Per'a, to enliven or reinvigorate the spirit of the deceased individual and so forth. So when you have that Ankh, it is a talisman holding the Ankh at the base. And when the life force energy moves up that talisman and moves through the circular portion, it generates an electromagnetic field, and it wields the energy of whatever divinity is holding it. And you can even, if you look online of someone taking making a copper ankh, making it in the form, using some copper to make an ankh. Once they connect it to a battery, once the current moves through the ankh and starts moving through that loop, it generates an electromagnetic field. And then they can use, they can use it to pick up, things like paper clips and so forth, because, it becomes magnetized. So in the same fashion, when you see a divinity holding an ankh as a talisman, this unique configuration of energy that divinity, that force in nature carries, it is wielded through that ankh talisman. The same thing when you see human beings hold it. Your energy is manifesting a unique configuration. You're different, just like your physical body is different from everybody else's. Your spirit body is different from everybody else's. The construction of your spirit body lends itself to the nature of the energy complex that you wield, that's unique to you. So when you hold an ankh and the energy moves through the, shaft portion and through the loop and starts whipping around and generates an electromagnetic field, it's based on your energy complex. So it's a talisman. But it's used in a funerary context here. You see the same thing with the divinity Ptah, placing the ankh near the nose of the individual, ankhing the per'a, this whole notion of the breath of life and so forth, placing the ankh, the life symbol, near the nose to invigorate or enliven the individual or ankh the individual and so forth. The per'a, so-called pharaoh, but per'a, sen usret, wielding ankhs as well. So we talk about how when we sit in front of the shrines of the divinities and invoke them through spirit communication, spirit possession, and so forth, we have a direct relationship. Now, once again, we have this ankh, which is from the tomb of Tutankhamen. That one was found in his tomb. But then you have the akua, plural unkwa, from the Akan tradition, which they call a fertility doll, but it's a talismanic instrument as well. Now, same structure. In the Akan dictionary, this is an entry from the Akan tree dictionary. The term onkwa means life, vitality, vigor, health, and so forth. That is ankh or anku in ancient Kemet, meaning life as well. So the same word, onkwa, in Akan, and that's how it's pronounced in the Akan language. Even in Akan tradition, if you were to go to Ghana and communicate with some Akan people, some of them, when someone sneezes, instead of saying bless you, they'll say onkwa, they'll say life, onkwa. So, but it's the same term. Now let's look at the term itself. You see the term ankh. The wavy line here is the wavy. It's a water line, but it's also electromagnetic wave and so forth. That's the n sound, that wave line. And then the cf right here, the circular dark circle, is the k sound, but it can also be the ch sound and so forth. But that's and k. So it's ankh, and so forth. So let's look at the linguistic aspect of what we're talking about. Now, we say the A sound takes many forms in the medutu in the hieroglyphs of Kemet. Certain words beginning with an A are therefore pronounced with an A or a Ya sound, either A or Ya. Look at the term to know, to understand, book learned. At, field, acre, land, plowed or cultivated land. In the ancient dialect, but then you have the Coptic. When it says COPT, that's the Coptic dialect. That is the late period dialect. So by the end of Kemet, about 2,000 years ago, near the end of the dynastic period, of the late period version of the language called the Coptic dialect of the language, which is still spoken today. That's the dialect that became popular about 2,000 years ago at the end of the dynastic period. By the times the, Persians and then later Greeks and Romans invaded and so forth, the Coptic dialect was already being spoken by the people in different versions. So some terms are pronounced differently in the Coptic dialect than the ancient dialect 1,000 years or 2,000 or 3,000 years prior to that. And you'll see variations. So in the Coptic dialect, instead of you'll see it's spelled in Coptic here, E-I-M-E. Aime, Aime. So becomes Aime. Then you have At, the little vulture here, which is also African fish eagle, is the sound. The twisted flax is the H, and the little loaf, the half circle, is the T. So that's A-H-T, At. But if you look in the Coptic dialect, and there are different variations of the Coptic spelling, you'll see E-I-R-H-E, E-I-O-O-H-E, I-A-H-I-O-H-E, and so forth. So instead of At, you also have Iya. For example, this is an I in Coptic, this is an A. Hold on one second. This is At. But in Coptic, you see this is an I, that's an A, and that is an H. So instead of At, it's I-A-H, which is E-At. And when you put E for the I and At together, it's E-At, E-At. So it goes from At to E-At, E-At. That's just a dialectical variation. Iyohi, Iyohi. That's another variation. Iyohe, Iyohe. So At becomes Iya. Becomes Iyami, Iyami. So you have At and Iya. That's the important part. That's not unheard of linguistically, because we say a similar occurrence is found in the Akan language. The term Afunu or Afuru, meaning belly or inner abdomen, is also pronounced and written in Akan as Yafunu, Yafunu. So you went from Afunu to Yafunu. The difference between A and Ya with the Y is really, a Y is really an E and an A together. And when you put E and A together, it's E-A becomes E-A, E-A. So that's the only difference. A and Ya, that's the only difference. So you find Afunu, then you find Yafunu. You find in ancient Kemet, in the Coptic dialect, you go from At here to Iya and so forth. That's the key. This is the process by which the term ANKH in the late period dialect becomes pronounced Yonk, Iyonk, Iyonk. Now, it's often stated that the etymology of the term yoga comes from the proto-indo-european root yug and the Sanskrit term yuj. The Indo-European term yug is also the root of the English version yoke. The true etymology is rooted in the reality that the whites and their offspring stole the term from ancient Afuraka, Afuraitkait, Africa. The variations Jung and the WG is Yug, which is nasal Jung, and Yuj are derived from Ankh, and the Ankh is pronounced Iyonk, Iyonk, like in the Coptic dialect. Instead of Ankh, it's Iyonk, Yonk. The nasal pronunciation of N produces the term Yunk, which later becomes Yug, as well as Yuj and Yuj, but Yug in proto-indo-european. Now, with regard to the nasal N and its corruption in white pronunciations of the Coptic term, we quote from this linguistic text. An infix. So, let me just go back real quick. So the Indo-European term yug comes from yonk or yonk and so forth, but there's a nasal N in onk or yonk. Where does that come from? So you see the nasal N in ANKH or EONK. Where does that come from? Now we look at the linguistic term, the infix. So we say an infix, a bound morpheme. So you have prefixes like, prologue as opposed to, or pre-judge as opposed to judging something, pre-order as opposed to order something, that's the prefix. You also have suffixes, but there's also a device called an infix that's inside of the term. So an infix is a bound morpheme that interrupts the morpheme. In a few language families like Austronesian, which is Southeast Asia, infixes are abundant. In most Indo-European languages, they are rare or non-existent. English and most modern Indo-European languages do not have any. Proto-Indo-European had one infixing verb stem marker, which is ne alternating with n. And then they give an example. They happen to give the right example we need them to give. For example, the root yug, link, join, or yoke. The present imperfect finite stems were you see yug, and then they put the ne or the n in between, uneg or yung, yunk, componentially you, ne, ga, or you, nga, yonk. So that's important. Now you look at the etymology. The Sanskrit word yoga has the literal meaning of yoke from a root yuj, meaning to join, to unite, or to attach. As a term for a system of abstract meditation or mental abstraction, it was introduced by Patanjali in the 2nd century BC, just over 2,000 years ago. We're going to show we've been using this term for over 5,000 years. Now, hold on one second. So you see that in Proto-Indo-European, yug means to link, join, or yoke. In Sanskrit, yug becomes yuj. So you have yug as well as yuj. And when we talk about Proto-Indo-European, we're talking about the parent of the Indo, meaning Indian, and European languages. So when they talk about Proto-Germanic, Tocharian, as well as Sanskrit in India, when Europeans left Europe and some of them migrated to into the Near East and into Asia and so forth, and into the region of India, and invaded northern India and so forth, when Black people were already there and so forth. And then some of them, they waged war against the original Black population there for the next 1,000 years. And then they created a mulatto type class. And this is why you have in northern India, you have pale, white-skinned individuals. And the further south you get, the browner the people get until you get to the furthest in the south. And you will find Black people. And as a matter of fact, let's just show an image of them real quick so you can see. So this is very important. Show you a quick image. This is something that most people are unaware of, but we study trustery, it's common knowledge. In fact, let me switch over to this other. Okay. So if you look at this image right here, and we'll just blow that image up for you. Let me see if I can get a better. Okay, so if you look at them, let me get it better. I just want you to see the close up. All right, so that's better. So if you look at these individuals, if you see them, most people would say, oh, these people are from Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, these people are from Africa. And they are originally, but they are living just south of India on the Andamanese Islands, just south of the Indian subcontinent. And then some of their people live in southern India. These people are descendant from the original inhabitants of India. They went to India over 60,000 years ago, and they still exist in India today. Some on the Andamanese Islands, just south of the Indian subcontinent, some in southern India. These are the original quote unquote Indians. They're black-skinned people with naturally coiled hair, natural Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit features, unchanged for over 60,000 years. When the whites and their offspring invaded India over 4,000 years ago, they came in contact with them. And when they began to wage war against them, because the whites and their offspring invaded, northwest India where Pakistan is and so forth, they invaded that area first. They waged war against the original black population for the next 1,000 years. And when they talk about the Mahabharata, the great conflict and so forth, that's part of that. But in the process of that, rape, miscegenation creates a mulatto population, a mulatto class of light-skinned, tan-skinned, halfway straight-haired individuals, and they are gradients. The further north you're in India, the majority of the population is a lighter-skinned, pale-skinned, straight-haired, quote-unquote, Hindus or Indians. The further south you get, they get darker and darker and darker until you get to the further south, and you see some of these people, but they've wiped most of these individuals out. Some of them still exist. So it was these people who brought our ancestral religion from ancient Afuraka, Afuraitkai, because they are Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African people, inclusive of what is now called yoga and so forth. They never stopped practicing their culture, and they still do practice their culture. So when you talk about Hinduism and the Hindus in India and all that other stuff, they're descended from the white barbarians who invaded and learned about culture when they came in contact with our people. And of course, they corrupted it. So let's go back. So when we're talking about this original culture, we're talking about our people who established it. So when they talk about Sanskrit, talking about the, language in India and so forth, that's part of the proto-indo-european language family and so forth. Sanskrit is yoga, but it's yug, and proto-indo-european. And Sanskrit comes out of proto-indo-european, yug, or they also pronounce yug, as you can see with the G. The G can be the G sound, or the G can be the J sound. Just like in English, G can be go or get, but G can also be generate. G or J. Same thing in Proto-Indo-European. It can be yug. In the Sanskrit dialect is yuj. Same thing, but yug meaning to yoke and so forth. Now, but that term is a system of abstract meditation or mental abstraction. It was introduced by Patanjali in the 2nd century BC, which is very, very recent. So we showed how yug, Proto-Indo-European had the uneg or yung forms. That yonk is where they stole from ancient Ankh or yonk and so forth. Later becomes yoke to link and all of that. And they omit the etymological root of the notion of yoking and its perceived relationship to spiritual practice. Now, When they're talking about to yoke, meaning yoke the self to the divine and so forth, what does yoke have to do with spirituality and spiritual practice? And why did they use that terminology? Why does the sounds yonk, yonk, or yunk? Why is that set of sounds mean to yoke? Why doesn't li mean to yoke? Why doesn't bobo mean to yoke? Why does it have to be yonk means to yoke? They can't tell you why that set of sounds references linking or tying or binding or yoking and so forth, because they don't know the origin of it, because they stole it from our languages. So, but we have the etymological origin plus the cosmology that undergirds the origin. Now, in the medutu, in the hieroglyphs of ancient Kamit, you have ankh, to live upon something, life, all of that, different variations of the term. Anki, Anku, a living being. Ankit, the living one, a name of a goddess. You have another dictionary. They spell it with the ankh and the animal. Hold on 1 second. The Mark Vigus Hieroglyphic Dictionary, a popular dictionary, you see ankh, goat or small cattle. So they have the symbol of the ankh and then the symbol of the goat itself, which is an animated life form, a life. In this context, animal life. So they show that here. So that is a spelling of ankh itself, just the ankh symbol itself and the symbol of the animated life or animal life. So you see all these different variations of the spelling. Let me go back up. So these are just different variations of the way to spell ankh. Sometimes they just use the symbol itself because the people in Kamit knew what the symbol meant. They can just use the symbol itself, and that means ankh. That's how you spell ankh. Or sometimes they would spell it all the way out. Here they spell ankh, and then the wavy line, which is the N, the circle ka, so that's unk, the roll of papyrus, showing it has something to do with something hidden or concealed as sacred. The coil rope is the U, so this is anku, as a matter of fact. And then you have the shrouded figure. You don't pronounce that symbol. The shrouded figure showing that this is a spirit. So in this context, this is an ankh, but it's a living being, a living entity, but a human life. Here, this is an ankh, but they show the animal, talking about it's an animal life, an animal ankh, animal life, as opposed to a human ankh or a human life. So this is the way to spell the animal life. This is the way to spell the human life. A goat, small domesticated goat, animals, small cattle, and so forth. Now, here's the connection to the spirit that the whites and offspring didn't know anything about, and they had to learn that from our people. The term sa or sahu literally means the spirit body. So just like you have a physical body, your physical body is animated by your spirit body. In ancient Kamit, we didn't say the spirit body. We said the sa or sahu, your spirit body. And Akan is called the sun sum, the spirit body. Like you have a spirit, a sun sum or a sahu. All right. So you'll see that, and there are multiple different spellings of the way you spell that in different contexts. So and here's one of the ways to spell it. And this is where the cosmology comes in. So the horizontal bolt is the S. The forearm with the open palm, which is like this, is the ah sound. The twisted flats is the H sound. So that's S-A-H, which is sa. Sometimes written sahu, but sa, the spirit body. And then you have the animal and the human being You don't pronounce those. Those are determinative symbols that give insight into what Sa is referencing. And when you have Sa, and then you have the animal and the shrouded human being, not a regular person just walking around, but the shrouded human being represents an ancestral spirit, like a shrouded, mummified human being and so forth, kneeling. So when you have Sa with these two determinative symbols, it represents the spirit body, not the physical body, but the spirit body. So when you have these two together, dealing with the animated life force of the spirit and so forth, that's what they're referencing. It's a seated elder or elderess. So you have the goat and the shrouded figure are also determinatives in the variations of the form Ankh. So you have the goat right here. The term Ankh for a living, for a person, the shrouded, mummified elder or elderess. For an animal, the goat. Now, let me go back. Hold on one second. Let me scroll down real quick. All right. Now, what do you notice with the goat? And let me show you one of the reasons why we use this particular symbol when we made the image for this particular live stream. This is one of those goats from that region of Kemet and so forth, the living symbol that you see here with the, great horns and so forth, that oryx, that, Nubian oryx, the Kamiti, Egyptian oryx as well. But animal life, animated force, and of course the divine living energy within us is an animating force. Notice that in the term Ankh, with the determinative of the goat, the animal has an Ankh around its neck. This Ankh around its neck became known and pronounced as the Eonk, or Yonk around its neck. That's the Yonk or the yoke around its neck. So the Ankh or Eonk literally is Eok. The Ankh is the Yunk in proto-indo-european, Yunek in proto-indo-european, Yug or Yuch in Sanskrit, yoke in English, Yonk. So the Ankh or Eonk is a yoke. That's the connection. It's linking the animated life force of the spirit body to the divinities. There's a link. The yoke itself. The whites and offspring can't tell you why the sounds Eonk have to do with some kind of form of linking something. They just know when you put those sounds together, it means to link or to bind or to tie or to yoke. When you say, well, why do those sounds mean that? Why does that particular word mean that? They can't tell you why, because they stole the term from our language and then they claimed it as proto-indo-european. But we have the symbolism of the Ankh as a yonk, as a yoke for thousands of years. And then we have the deities holding the yonk or the yoke and wielding it for fertility purposes and funerary purposes. They don't have that in their culture. So let's go a little bit further. So we say, however, there's more to the association which is rooted in our cosmology. We must understand that the spirit body, the Sahu, you have to understand that cosmological connection. The Sa or Sahu is sometimes referred to as the glorified spiritual body. Sometimes the determinative medutu is not a shrouded individual. That's one of the ways to spell it. But sometimes it's a different determinative symbol. So you see the individual with his hands provoking the energy of the divinity who's holding the Ankh and so forth. So you have the Ankh representing the spirit body, the goat with the Ankh on its neck as a medutu for the term for Ankh, as well as the Sahu, the spirit body, is the reason why the shrouded figure, meaning the purified figure when they're shrouded, when they're mummified, that means just like a mummy's body is preserved for thousands of years, 5,000 years later, they open up a tomb and they find a mummified body and they open it up and it looks as though it was just preserved yesterday. In the same fashion, we can preserve our spirit body. And when you have a purified spirit body and it's shrouded like that, that means the person purified themselves, lived in harmony with divine order. They have a pure spirit body and they can dwell with the purified ancestresses and ancestors in the ancestral realm until it's time to reincarnate through their blood circles in this day and time and so forth. So you have the purified spirit body, the shrouded figure. That's a medutu, a hieroglyphic symbol for the term Ankh, as well as the term for Sahu, the spirit body. And we say it is meditation at our shrine, which leads to invocation and evocation of the deities and ancestral spirits and so forth. So go a little bit further. In that other portion, we were talking about how the term is related to Sum Sum in the Akan language. But here you have the animal totem of the Ka'et, the cow of the female divinity Het Heru, the divinity of love and sensuality and music and art and dance and so forth. She's called Oshun in Yoruba. She's called Afi in Akan. She's also called Cheche in Akan. But she is, you see her sacred animal totem. She's in the form of the sacred Ka'et. She has a sesheshet, or so-called sistrum, around her neck in the form of an Ankh. Once again, in the form of a yonk or a yoke, uniting internally the spirit and the soul, the Ba or Ba'et, the spirit, and the Ka or Ka'et, the soul, uniting the divine living energy, the solar fire, golden energy that animates you, uniting that to your divine consciousness. When you link the Ba and the Ka, spirit and soul for males, or Ba'et and Ka'et, spirit and soul for females, inside the spirit body, inside the Sahu, that's what the Ankh actually does. It fuses together that divine living energy that animates you, that comes from the creator and creatress, with your divine consciousness. So that's the link. Then you see Henut, which is Queen Mother Nefertari. She utilizes the Sesheshet, or so-called sistrum, and so forth. Then we show an Ankh, and then we show also they will take the seal, the sacred symbol of the seal in ancient Kemet, and they will utilize that in the form of an Ankh as well. And that's important because they will put that. There's another spelling of Sahu. We just saw the spelling of Sahu with the bolt and the forearm and the flax, and they had the shrouded figure on his knees and the goat with the Ankh around his neck. Well, in this one, it's the S-A-H, and instead of the goat or the shrouded figure, they have the little seal in the form of an Ankh. That's another way to spell Sa or Sahu. Here's another way to spell it. The bolt, which is the S, forearm open palm, which is the A, the flax, which is the H, Sa, and they have the little seal as well as a seated, shrouded, bearded figure. Different spellings of the same word. And that seal right here is one of these seals. And then there's a loop that you use to put the seal around the neck. So in this context, you have the seal right here, and it's tied to a loop. And they put it around the neck of the goat in the form of an Ankh or yoke, talking about a seal. The Ankh is a yoke, and it ties together or binds together the spirit and the soul, the Ba and the Ka, the Ba'et and the Ka'et. The seals that we use in ancient Kemet for regular documents were also something spiritual, and you'll see the people with the seal in their hand and so forth. It's also something that sealed together the life force energy, sealed their divine function and creation. There's a lot of cosmology tied up with the seal, but they even put that in the form of an ankh, put it around the neck of the animal in the form of a yoke as well. So we were just showing that portion when you read through this part of the book, showing the different ways that they made the ankh in the form of a yonk or yoke. So we can end this foolishness about ankh comes from the Sanskrit language or proto-indo-european. This predates the proto-indo-european language by thousands of years. Before Europeans existed on Earth, before the first white individual walked on Earth, we were already using this symbol as ankh and yonk and so forth in the form of a yoke. All right. So then we talk about some, ritual practices and so forth. You see Ma'at sitting here in the typical meditative posture, the origin of the common meditative posture. And even before that, ankh is the origin of the term yoke. Yoga yoke, ankh. Yoga is not a discipline. They've even transformed the term life and tried to turn it into a series of movements and so forth. We said, we are guided by the Abosom and Nananom and Samafo, the deities, the forces in nature, the goddesses and gods that animate all of creation, and our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. And the divinity that governs our head, our divine consciousness. And we say this is an effect of life when we communicate with them at the shrine and so forth, and change positions when we're sitting in front of a divinity at a shrine and so forth. This is an effect of ankh life. It is not a practice of a yoga discipline. So we're going to get into that presently. Origin of the common meditative posture. You see these various divinities seated with their knees up in the common meditative posture. This is from the Papyrus of Ani. This is the divinity Anan, sacred animal totem for the deity Tahuti and so forth, divinity of divine wisdom, patron of scribes. So you see the scribe here, Neb Merutef, communicating with this divinity, but this is a spirit. If you were clairvoyant and you were standing in the room and so forth, and you saw him sitting there with his legs crossed, eyes closed, he's communicating with the spirit, the spiritual force. If you were clairvoyant, you could see the spirit standing there, just like somebody can see the spirit of their grandmother, deceased grandmother standing in the corner of the room. If you're clairvoyant, you can see the spirit of a divinity in the space. But if we're making a sculpture or drawing, the person sitting there in ritual to show him communicating with the divinity, an invisible spirit, of course, you have to either draw the spirit fully or make a sculpture of the spirit. But he's sitting down, communicating with an invisible spirit that you can only see if you're clairvoyant. Just like we sit down when we pour libation today at the shrine of our ancestresses and ancestors or the divinities, the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, then we sit down in front of the shrine to communicate with this divinity or this ancestral spirit. If someone took a picture of us on an iPhone, they would see us sitting there. They would see a shrine. They wouldn't see the spirit unless they were clairvoyant. But we're doing the exact same thing. Neb Merutef is meditating, communicating with the sacred baboon Aran of Tahuti. That's what he's engaged in right now. He's engaged in Susu, which is the ancient term for meditation, communicating with the spirit, legs crossed. When we're communicating with a divinity, a force in nature, or a spiritually cultivated ancestor or ancestress, that's what we're doing. And when a different spirit moves into the space, depending on their energy complex, it will force our body to shift positions. No different than if you've ever seen, for example, ritual dance in the Yoruba tradition, for example, the Orisha dances, or in Vodun, where they're dancing for the different Vodou and so forth. They have certain dances for Oshun. That spirit comes when the drums change and they want to invoke a different divinity. The energy changes and it forces them to move in a different fashion, move their bodies differently to receive that energy. If you're sitting down, if somebody was watching myself sitting in front of an ancestral shrine, communicating, meditating to communicate with an ancestral spirit, a different spirit comes into the space and forces me to shift position to fully receive that energy in an optimal fashion. What they would see from the outside looking in is I'm just sitting with my eyes closed quietly for a while, and then all of a sudden I change position, and then I'm in that position for a while quietly, and then they see me change position again. And if they didn't ask me what was happening, they may just think, oh, he just, he's tired of sitting like that. They didn't know either a different ancestral spirit or divinity moved into the space. So from the outside looking in, they're like, oh, they sit for a while, they're quiet, they stretch, and then they move into a different position and they sit like that. Oh, I can do that. And then they go home and practice and stretch and move their legs in a certain way and sit there for a while. And then they say, I'm practicing yoga right now. Now I'm going to teach a class in yoga, and this is a yoga position, and this is how you hold your knees, and this is how you hold your legs, and it helps with your kidneys, and it helps with your pancreas, and pure stupidity. They're not communicating with anything. They're just changing positions and holding them and then helping somebody else move their legs in position. Nonsense. They have no clue about what's going on. But this is the original practice. And it still goes on today in any ancestral religious practice, any authentic ancestral religious practice. You see the creator of the universe, Ra, sitting inside of the Aten, the sun. And just so you can get a quick understanding, we always do this just so people can understand. This is one of the books that we published. Hold on one second. Okay, one of the 31 books we published is Inyokumpon and Yonkunton, Ra and Ra'et. And in this book, we're showing that Ra and Ra'et are the creator and creatress. So there's a balance between the creator and the creatress. In the Akan language, Ra is called Inyokumpon and Ra'et is called Inyokunton. In Yoruba, that's Odumare and Oshumare, and Vodun is Da and Idahuedo and so forth. But we just wanted to show you that. All right. Just so you understand that whenever we're talking about the creator and creatress, it's not just a male creator. There's a creator and creatress. There's always a balance. It's a great mother and great father, like Amen and Amenet. There's a balance. So you see the baboons praising Ra when he's the spiritual force sitting inside of the Aten. The sun is called Aten and Atenit. And Ra, as well as Ra'et, use their energy to enter and penetrate the Aten, the Atenit, the sun. Aten is the sun god. Atenit is the sun goddess. And Ra and Ra'et will possess Aten and Atenit, the sun god, sun goddess, and transmit their energy through the solar disk. The ancient Anan, the baboons and so forth, are sacred animal totems to the ancestresses and ancestors in ancient Kemet, as well as across the continent. So they were representative. And you see this, the gray hair and so forth. You see this sacred Anan, the sacred baboon and so forth, representative and carries the energy of our ancestral clans, that energetic force and so forth, animal totems, sacred animal totems. So because of that, and because of their movements and their function in the world and so forth, you see that they have that natural posture that we replicate. And you see this all over Kemet for thousands of years, this seated posture, this typical meditative posture that you see all over Kemet, replicating that sacred posture of the sacred animal totem. We don't have like pets We have sacred animal totems. Different animals carry the energy of different divinities. They are shrines, living shrines for different deities. Some fiery animals are shrines for fire divinities. Some watery animals, marine animals are shrines for river or ocean divinities. Some earth animals are shrines for earth divinities and so forth. So we don't have pets. We have animal totems that carry the energy of different divinities. And when they're around us, we interact with them just like plants. There's fiery plants and watery plants and different kinds of plants. There are plant totems for different divinities. There are animal totems that carry the energy of different divinities. There are mineral totems that carry the energy of different divinities. And there are human totems, which are us, Black people only, of course, that carry the energy of specific divinities. Some of us are children of fire divinities. Some of us are children of water divinities. Some of us are children of atmospheric divinities and so forth. We are the totems in the human sphere for the forces in creation. Animals have totems, mineral life, as well as plant life. So, sacred animal totem, this is where you get that common meditative posture from. And you see that all throughout Kemet and so forth. You see Sin and Mut in a form of that ancient posture, seated with the knees up and the arms crossed on top. So it's not always just the, legs being crossed and so forth. Now, the crossed legs is just one of many poses. Now we get into the origin of the term chakra. So that's the origin of the term yoga, yoka, yoke, yonk, yuneg or yonk, from ankh or ionk and so forth. It is literally the link between the spirit and the soul, the ba and the ka, the bayat and kaya. Now, the concept of chakra features in tantric and yogic traditions. Hold on a second. Now let's get into the origin of the term chakra because they lie about this as well. And we're setting the record straight. And our book is the first and only to do that. The concept of chakras is typically associated with pseudo-discipline of yoga. Again, this term is one stolen from Kemet by the whites and their offspring. So look at these quotes. The concept of chakra features in tantric and yogic traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism. Its name derives from the Sanskrit word for wheel or turning. Chakram in Hindi, Pali, kaka. You also have, different variations. Let's go down a little bit further. Chakras correspond to vital points in the physical body, but are generally understood as being part of the subtle body, which cannot be found through autopsy, while breath channels, nadis of yogic practices had already been discussed in the classical Upanishads. It was not until the 8th century Buddhist Vajra Tantra and Karayagiti that hierarchies of chakras were introduced. It's very important. The 8th century. We're talking about the 700s, quote unquote, AD, when they started talking about hierarchies of chakras. They weren't talking about that 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. They weren't talking about that. They didn't know anything about that. So when they try to pretend like this is some ancient practice, in just the 700s, the 8th century AD, that's when they first had hierarchies of chakras, they'll make you believe they were talking about that 5,000 years ago, which they were not. In fact, the whites and offspring weren't even in India 5,000 years ago. Just the original Black people were there. So now, in this individual's review of tantric history, says that the word chakras is used to mean several different things in the Sanskrit sources. Number one, a circle, used in a variety of senses. Two, a circle of people and rituals and so forth, kakra, sadhana, and all of that. Three, the term chakra is also used to denote yantras or mystic diagrams. And then 4 different nerve plexus within the body. In Buddhist literature, the Sanskrit term Chakra, in Pali, kaka, but Chakra is used in a different sense of circle. referring to a Buddhist conception of cycle of rebirth and all of that. The linguist Jorma Vuleto wrote of the annual Finnish Kekri celebration, so they're talking about that. But Indo-European cognates include the Greek kuklos, so circle or kirkro comes from kokoro, and kakale and kokora, but comes from kakara. Kakara becomes kakaro, kakaro becomes kirkro, kokoro becomes circle, and so forth. Now let's look in the etymological dictionary, etymology online. Chakra, in a yoga sense, a spiritual center of power in the human body. From Sanskrit, kakra, circle or wheel. From the proto-indo-european root, quel, which is quer, revolve or move around. Originally, it simply meant circle or wheel. They don't get into hierarchies of chakras until thousands of years later. But originally, it's just circle or wheel, kakra. When you look in ancient Kamit, thousands of years before whites existed, kara, when it's pronounced kar, or kara, anything round, staff, stick, roll, or cylinder. So we have the term in the medutu before the whites and offspring existed on Earth. So who's the origin of the term? It's our people. But we go further because they didn't talk about hierarchies of, chakras until the 8th century AD. So the 700s. What do our people have to say about that? We not only have kar or kakara, karakara, but the root of kar or karakara also have, kar, stone boulders, and so forth. The root of it is kar, which is reduplicated as kar. And we also understand that kar is also written kara. That's why we can show that kar is also pronounced kara in ancient Kamit. What does the root kara mean? Shrine, sanctuary, chapel, gods of a shrine, and so forth. It is a shrine. So it's a circle, but it's also a shrine. The shrines of the divinities, we create a shrine and spirit takes up residence in a shrine, just like a spirit can possess you and your body becomes a living shrine of a divinity and the spirit speaks through you and heals and so forth the community before the spirit leaves the body. But we can create a shrine, invoke the divinity, and the spirit comes down and takes up residence temporarily in that shrine to communicate. In the same sense of a cell phone becomes a shrine once you make a connection and someone 3,000 miles away can communicate with you through that phone. We do the same thing when we set up a shrine for an ancestral spirit of divinity. Once we set it up and invoke them or evoke them, then they communicate with us through that device. So kara means circle, but it also means shrine. The original shrines or circles that carry the energy of the divinities are the stars, suns, moons, planets, those the original things that were created. These are circular structures, kara, that are shrines for the spirits of the divinities that animate the stars, suns, moons, and planets. And they still do so. So circle, kara, shrine, kara, so forth. This is a shrine from ancient Kamit, where they would put the statue of a divinity inside of that shrine. You see some of the ornamentation on the side of it and so forth. And then we talk about, there's a text from ancient Kamit talking about the shrines of the body. So different parts of the body in our culture are shrines to different divinities. And this text from ancient Kamit says, my hair is the hair of the divinity Nu. My face is the face of Ra. My eyes are the eyes of Het-Heru. My ears are the ears of Apuat, the divinity. My nose is the nose of Khanit Sheps. My lips are the lips of Anpu. My teeth are the teeth of the divinity Kepra. my neck is the neck of all Set. So they go through the entire body, and each part of the body is a shrine for a force in creation. Then it says, there is no member of my body that is without an ntoro, meaning a god or a goddess. Tuhuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, shields my body altogether, and I am like unto Ra, the creator of the universe, every day. So this notion of different parts of the body are shrines for deities goes back to ancient Kemet thousands of years ago, and then there are hierarchies within the body and the organs and so forth that we know about. So parts of the body are kara, shrines for the divinities. This is why the kara or chakras are recognized to be shrines, sacred centers of energy for the deities, and so forth. Fully incorporated in ritual thousands of years before the whites and offspring exist, and of course thousands of years before Hinduism, thousands of years before the 8th century when they first started talking about hierarchies of divinities. So this is the spirit of the Pera, so-called pharaoh, but the Pera, his spiritual heart on the standard. And then his Ba, they show his Ba or his spirit in the form of a bird with his head, the human-headed bird, and a jade pillar in the form of an ankh around the neck of the spirit. So just like your spirit can leave your body and return to the body, like spirit possession, they'll show the spirit in the form of a bird that flies out, but then flies back in and flies out, gets purified by the divinities and gets back in the body and so forth. Just like when you take a deep breath and you pull in air, but you also pull in solar energy. You can also breathe it out and it leaves your body, but you can pull it back in. Your spirit can leave your body just like the spirit will, we talk about leave the body during the sleep state and go communicate with other spirits and get back inside and so forth. The after death state, the spirit leaves the body, but it never returns. There's a cord that's broken, and then the body deteriorates, and the spirit lives with the ancestral spirits until it's time to reincarnate. So they'll show the spirit in the form of a bird, but it has the ankh and jade pillar together, but it's around the neck of the spirit bird in the form of an ankh. Once again, we just showed that just to show that notion of the yoking, even with the symbol for the spirit. And this is from ancient Khanit or Nubia. This is a mural from ancient Nubia. Now, that was the second part. That was the first part of the book. The second part, we repost the same, information about karakara, origin of the term chakra. We show that once again. Now we get into these hierarchies of, energy. They said they didn't come up with the hierarchies of, chakras until the 8th century. And they didn't. So they didn't know what was going on. Chakra just meant wheel to them for thousands of years. Just meant a circle. Kirkle, Kirkoro, Kukura, Kakra, and so forth. They don't know where it comes from. But for us, we already had this understanding. So what does this text say? When they're writing about the chakras, one of the popular texts, The Chakras by Ledbetter, one of the first texts written by someone in the West regarding the chakras, written in 1927. This is like the first book when the West was introduced to the chakra system and so forth, and they were trying to investigate, okay, where does this come from? He said the Hindu books hint at, rather than explain, what happens when Kundalini, the serpent spirit, rises up the channel through the Sushumna, which is the spiritual spine. They refer to the spine as Meru Danda, the rod Danda of Meru, the deity Meru, the central axis of creation, presumably of the body. In that, they say there is a channel called Sushumna, which is basically the spiritual spine. Within that, another called Vajrini. And within that, again, a third called Chitrini, deep within the spine and so forth, which is as fine as a spider's thread. Upon that are threaded the chakras, like knots on a bamboo rod. So What the Hindu texts are talking about is inside the spine. When they talk about the chakras are up and down the spine and so forth, the 7 centers along the spine, they'll talk about the chakras are threaded along the spiritual spine energy like knots along a bamboo rod from the base to the crown. These are the later Hindu books, of course, when they start learning about, hierarchies of chakras. Now, but the rod of Meru, the deity Meru, that's what the spine is called. Now, this is the deity Men, or Amen Men. He's also called Men or Minu. This is where they get Meru. It comes from Minu. They stole the name from this deity. He wears the crown, the skull cap crown here with the ribbon that goes all the way down. He also has the golden crown here with the ribbon from the back that goes all the way down. They never understood, why does he wear that kind of crown? He has the 2 feathers, but why does he have the skull cap type crown or this crown with a ribbon from the back of the head going all the way down? They never understood what that crown represented. He's the only deity that wears that crown. We can prove that because his name, Men, or Minu, also called Amen Men or Amen Minu. In the Akan culture and language of Ghana and Ivory Coast, he's still called Amen Men. He governs the planet called Ameni, which is Saturn. Saturday is called Menminida. We have an article called Amen Men, the Abosom, the deity of Ameni, the planet Saturn, and Menminida, which is Saturday. Da means day. Menmini means the day of Menmini, of the deity Amen, and the planet Ameni. The word for brain in Akan is Amemini. So, the deity Amemini wears the crown, which is the central nervous system, the brain and spinal column. That is the Amemini crown. That's the part of the body that this deity governs. That is his shrine in the body, the Amemini, the brain. He wears the brain crown to show you where his energy resides in the body. He governs this, the central nervous system and so forth, the central axis of the body, the spine and so forth. When they say Meru Danda, the rod of Meru, the rod of Menu, this is the rod of the deity Menu, Ameminu, Amemini, and so forth. That is the spine. So they stole the name of the deity. They stole his location in the body. We still call the brain Amemini and Akan today. It's the central nervous system, brain and spinal column. Stole the name, stole the location, stole all of that. Central axis, all of that. Now let's go a little bit further. We said the notion of 7 chakras being akin to knots on a bamboo pole rod within the sushumna of the spine was also stolen directly from Kamit by the whites. It must be understood that the doctrine of the chakras as plagiarized by the whites and their offspring is very recent. The first mention of chakras as psychic centers. That's very important. In a rudimentary form, is typically stated to be found in the text called the Upanishads in India. The later Upanishads, the earlier of which were composed between 2200 and 1800 years ago, meaning the 2nd century BC and the 2nd century CE or AD, are where the basic notions of chakras are first plagiarized by the whites. So just 2200 years ago, which is very recent, the 2nd century BCE, dynastic Kemet was already over at that point. That's when they first started mentioning chakras in a rudimentary form as energy centers and so forth. Then they don't have hierarchies of chakras until the 7 chakra system was not plagiarized and propounded by the whites until centuries later, beginning approximately 1500 years ago. 6th century AD into 7th and 8th and so forth. So it's around that time they start looking at 4 chakras, 8 chakras, and then they looked at 7 and so forth. That's, 1,500 years ago. That's very recent. This information was stolen and corrupted by the whites from the writings and culture of the ancient Kamau, our people from ancient Kemet, which predate Hinduism, the Upanishads, Vedanta, and Tantra by thousands of years. So this notion that Tantra is ancient, which it is not, Vedanta is ancient, which it is not, the Upanishads are ancient, which they are not, Hinduism, Buddhism is not ancient at all. So, very recent corruption. Now let's prove it. In ancient Kemet, the term, it's not thas with the th, it's the tethered rope, and that is the ka sound. When we say the th in terms, thas or thaset is really kas and kaset, often transliterated as the tj or tch, cha, can be pronounced as the ka sound, like in change, as well as the cha sound is in change, or the ka sound is in chrome and so forth. In the late period dialect Coptic, we talked about Coptic before, the term is spelled kas. This is how it's spelled in Coptic. And this symbol right here is the ka sound, and this is all. And the C is the sa, like C is in cellular in English. So that is ka, a, and sa, kos. So this is pronounced kos. Knot, tie, ligature, backbone, vertebrae, spine, kos. And when you show the U, that's the pyramid text of Unas, the pyramid text of Teti, which is the T and so forth, the most ancient text, spiritual text in existence. So, kos is a term meaning knot. We just saw that. It's in the form of a bolt or a knot. It also means the backbone of vertebrae spine, and it's spelled with that symbol of the vertebrae or spine. And they're locating that for you. Vertebrae, spine. This is a symbol of the vertebrae or spine and so forth. This is the knot. And the reason why that's important is because there are 7 kasu in the text of Kemet. This is the knot. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7 magical knots that protected a man. So we have 7 knots that protect us. Moreover, those 7 knots that protect the spirit body of the man are kasu 7. They're from the BD, means Book of the Dead or Book of Coming Forth by Day, chapter 71. The 7 gods who assisted at the judgment and condemnation of the wicked. So there are 7 knots in the spirit body of the person that protect the person, man or woman. And there are 7 deities that govern those 7 knots or centers. They talked about the chakras are threaded upon the spine energy, like knots on a bamboo rod and so forth. Well, those 7 knots are called kasu or knots in ancient Kemet. There are 7 of them, the kasu 7, and they're numbered 7. And there are 7 gods and goddesses who govern the 7 knots. And this predates Hinduism by thousands of years. When we go further, kas means chamber or room. Kaset, sarcophagus, funerary, kafir. Kas, master or chief. Kasit, lady or chieftainess. Kas, plural, troops, bodies of soldiers. But then you have kas, meaning to compose or connect a statement to arrange words in a logical sequence. A proverb, saying, formula, charm, spell, incantation, declaration, and so forth. Speeches, proverbs, precepts. So these sacred combinations of sound vibrations, incantations, ritual invocations, and so forth are kasu as well. Speaking ritual prayer, ritual song, ritual chant. The combination of sound vibrations are energetic force. They become a kas, plural kasu, and so forth. Always been part of our ancestral tradition. All right, so kasu, lawmakers, arrangers, disposers, managers. And you also have kas, to lift up, to raise oneself, to lift up, to raise, to rise, to mount, to be exalted, ascent, and so forth. Now, Kasu Uru, the group of deities who raise the dead. So, the term Kasu encompasses the notion of raising consciousness, awakening and raising up certain ancestral spirits from death, dormancy, and more. Now, 7 magical knots along the spine governed by 7 deities are found in the physical body. The spinal nerve ganglia and plexuses are seen as the physical representation of the 7 chakras at the following spinal anatomical locations: the coccyx, sacrum, lumbar, upper thoracic, cervical, mid, and upper brain. The nerve ganglia are a mass, meaning of a knot of nerve cells, and the plexuses are a network knot of spinal nerves. These physically are the 7 kasu, or knots. And there are 7 divinities that govern those 7 knot shrines. So there's energy moving through those 7 knots. The energy of the 7 knots are the 7 divinities that govern those 7 knots that protect the spirit body of the man or the woman. So we have that laid out. We have the term, the knots. There are 7 of them. We count them out. There are 7 deities associated with the 7 knots. And then we have a ritual practice associated with that. Chapter 71 of the Runu Pert Imeru, so-called Book of the Dead, Book of Coming Forth by Day, 3,600 years ago. Not in the 6th century AD, not in the 2nd century BC, very recent, but 3,600 years ago. And we even have texts earlier than that. So what does the text have to say in ancient Kemet? Owe you 7 knots. So they mention the 7 hierarchy of 7. Remember, in tantric traditions, they don't talk about 7 chakras until the 6th, 7th century AD. Owe you 7 knots, the arms of the balance on the night of setting the sacred eye in order, who cut off heads, who sever necks, who take away hearts, who make a slaughter in the island of fire. I know you, I know your names. May you know me just as I know your names. If I reach you, may you reach me. If you live through me, may I live through you. May you make me to flourish with what is in your hands. The staff, meaning the spine, which is in your grasp. May you determine or destine me to life annually. May you grant to me many years of life over and above my years of life, many days over and above my days of life, many nights over and above my nights of life until I depart. May I rise to be a likeness of myself. May my breath be at my nose. May my eyes see in company with those who are in the horizon on that day of dooming the robber. So we say here the spirits of the 7 kasu, of the 7 knots, the 7 deities governing the 7 knots in the body, are appealed to ritually for the elevation and recalibration of the individual spirit. This is evidence of the 7 karakara, the 7 kara shrines, the 7 karakara system, fully incorporated in ritual thousands of years before the whites and their offspring had any knowledge of its existence. Now, the kasu are the source of the 7 chakra imagery, placement, and ritual association that were later plagiarized and corrupted by the whites and their offspring. However, we must also understand the origin and nature of the kara shrines and kasu knots within the spirit body. So you see these sacred cobras with the solar disc on the head and so forth. called the Arat, plural Arai. They'll say Uraeus in in English, but it's Arat in ancient Kemet. The cobra is called the Arat in Kemet. There are numerous deities who take the form of the divine Arat or cobra, most popular being Wachet. And let me just show you this real quick. And we're almost done. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room, of course. We just have a couple more things we want to touch on, and don't want to keep you too long. I'm going to show you one of the articles we published on the divinity Wachet. She's called Ya in the Akan tradition or Ya in Yoruba. Wachet in ancient Kemet. That's an image of her. Her animal totem is the sacred cobra. We just did a live stream on her in detail. See the cobra on the head of the Per'a, so-called pharaoh, fire-spitting cobra on the head of Sekhmet as well as Ra and so forth. The sacred papyrus plant in the form of a cobra, the watch plant. You see the cobra and the vulture is Wachet and Nekabet, but then sometimes they're both cobras around the solar disk and so forth. So, and you see here as a winged cobra with the solar disk on her head and so forth. So, just wanted to show you that image when we were referencing Wachet as that sacred Arat or cobra energy. So there's a grouping of cobra deities that are 7 in number. The 7 Aratu, this number 7 Urei, are key to the notion of 7 of the Karakara, an excerpt from the Mer, which means pyramid, of the Per'a Unas over 4,400 years ago. So the reason why this is important is because the pyramid texts, or the Meru texts, are the oldest religious compositions yet unearthed in the world. So when you look in religious compositions, you won't find any older than the pyramid texts. Now, we have writings in ancient Kemet that are older than the pyramid texts, like invoices and names and all, different kinds of things. But as far as religious compositions, putting together cosmology, the nature and function of the deities and how they interact with one another and so forth, and their familial associations and all of that, and their relationship to us, as well as to plant life, animal life, and mineral life. The oldest religious compositions on Earth are the Meru texts, the pyramid texts, and they go back to 4,400 years ago. And we mentioned this cosmology with regard to these 7 divinities in the oldest text in existence. That's why it's important. So the text says, Unas, which is that's the great Per'a pharaoh, Unas, his name. They say Unas is the Nau snake, the leading bull, who has swallowed his 7 Aratu, meaning the 7 Urei cobras. And so his 7 neck vertebrae came into being, who give orders to the 7 Pasjatu Enneads to hear the words of the king. So he swallows these radiant solar cobra discs. He swallows them. They become his 7 neck vertebrae. 7 radiant forces become his 7 neck vertebrae and so forth. And then within his spirit body, and then they give orders to the 7 Posjatu, 7 groups of deities that work together. Utterance 318. This is the actual pyramid text of Unas, a photograph of that. Utterance is 318 to 321. You can get that from Pyramid Text Online and so forth, the actual primary source. So here the king, Per-A, identified as taking the form of a sacred snake who swallowed 7 cobras, which caused his 7 neck vertebrae to come into being. Now, while the kasu, or the 7 knots along the spine, the swallowing of the 7 aratu is the ingesting of 7 radiant discs. You saw the solar disc on the head of the cobra, who then take up residence within the king as his 7 neck vertebrae, cervical vertebrae. This act precipitates the development of the 7 magical knots within the body. Because of this ritual act, Unas is empowered to give orders to his 7 posjatu, 7 groups of deities. And we talk about Nut with the sacred stars in her body and all of that. The 7 posjatu means a group of divinities. And this is the term posjat. And when you look at the term posjat, groups of divinities, companies of divinities, a group of deities working together and so forth. But posjat or posach and so forth is also the word for back, backbone, vertebrae, to shine, to illuminate. So when Unas swallows 7 sacred aratu, these radiant cobra forces, they become his 7 neck vertebrae. So you have 7 radiant forces in the neck vertebrae and so forth, the cervical vertebrae. And then they give birth to these 7 groups of deities that are in the spirit body. You have a group of 7 deities here, a group of deities here, then another group, then another group, and another group. 7 groups of deities, just like you have bunches of nerves here in one knot, then another bunch of nerves here in another knot, and another bunch of nerves here, you know, the 7 nerve ganglia and plexuses and so forth. Those 7 posjatu, the term posjat means deities, but it also means back, backbone, vertebrae, to shine, illuminate. Look at the symbol and how it's spelled, and this pulls together everything. The first and greatest 9 deities, groups of deities. But if you look at how it's spelled, these are variations of the spelling, a reared cobra and a symbol of the backbone. Not a cobra laying on its stomach flat, but it's a raised up or reared cobra. You also have the reared cobra with the circle with the dot in the middle, which is the symbol of the sun, to shine, to illuminate. So what does all that mean? The term posjet, and they spell that different ways, thus means a sacred number grouping of deities, backbone, spine, and to shine, illuminate. These are descriptions of the kara, shrines, or radiant illuminate centers of energy along the spine, kasu, that are sanctuaries, kasu chambers, kara shrines for the deities, the aboson. The spelling of the posjat with the serpent reared and a solar disk, a radiant sun disk, as well as the radiant sun disk with the rays coming out and so forth. A spine, this is the symbol, shows the origin of the fiery serpent power moving through the spine, kundalini, all combined in one term. So we had all of those elements and the number 7 and the deities and the cosmology and the ritual invocations thousands of years ago before Hinduism existed, before the whites and their offspring existed. It references a swallowing of 7 radiant aratu, who become the 7 neck vertebrae. And then moreover, the arat can also take the form of a divine cobra with its body encircling the sun disk. And then we show the images of the divinity, you know, encircling the sun disk. So the solar, you know, the cobra snake encircling, kara, to circle the fiery solar disk on the head of Ra as well as Sekhmet. Now you have the term chas or chasa, to order, to arrange, to command. Chasa, a wise or learned man. Chas, knowledge, wisdom, speech. So to order to arrange, lawmakers, arrangers, wise or learned, knowledge, wisdom, speech. It's a variation of kas, meaning speeches, spells, incantations to arrange words in a logical sequence. Why is that important? Because in the Akan language, inyansa means knowledge, learning, wisdom. Kasa means speaking or speech. These are Akan terms. Inyansa, the ya term becomes cha, comes from nchasa, ANKH and KARKAR. It's inyansa in Akan, meaning knowledge, learning and so forth. Kas in ANKH and KARKAR, meaning speaking or speech or proverbs, is kasa in Akan and so forth. You also have kase and message and kasai. In Akan, you have the sacred wisdom knot in Yansapo. That's an Adinkra symbol in Akan culture in Ghana and Ivory Coast. You have the same symbol, brass symbol here, Abramu, the same knot from ancient Kemet, same wisdom knot. So let's go back up for a second. We said kas, compose a connected statement. Kas, proverb, saying, formula, charm, spell, incantation, declaration, statement, speech or defense of a defendant, word, precept. Kasu, plural, the U is plural. Kasu, speeches, proverbs, precepts. So that kas, meaning speech and all of that, and wise speech. In Akan, kasa, speaking, speech, same term. In Akan, inyansa, knowledge, wisdom. In ancient Kemet, that's chasa, which becomes nchasa or nyasa. In Akan, wise or learned man and so forth. Knowledge, wisdom, speech. So, kasa or chasa is a variation of kas. And the reason why that's important, this is a rectangular shrine as well as a circular shrine in the Akan tradition. A koro, a pot placed before the deity. They say fetish, it's an old dictionary, but that means a deity. A koro, that's a shrine for a divinity. It's one of these koro, shrines for a divinity. Same as kara, a shrine for a divinity in ancient Kemet. Koro, a large, round, flat wooden vessel. That's a round vessel, round shrine, and so forth. Kuruwa, a round and large or flat or globular things, circular, globular, spherical. Kuruwa, which is the reduplication of kuru. But you have korowa, you have same thing, korowa, round and small and so forth. That is koro, large, round, flat wooden vessel. The koro is the pot. So that's all showing that there's a circular koro, round koro, shrine, ekoro. That is kara, anything round, staff, shrine, cylinder, but also kara, meaning shrine. And then you have the kasu or chasu, the seven divine masters of wisdom who helped Tahuti, the deity of wisdom, plan the universe. And their names are Neferhat, Neferpehui, Neb-Desheru, Kaba, Kek, and San. These seven chasu, the wisdom divinities, are manifest as the seven kasu. And in the coffin text, these seven knots are referenced once again. OU 7 knots, and that's 4,000 years ago, coffin text number 407. OU 7 knots of Mehet Urt, that's her, female divinity. May you make me fresh, may you make me to live, may you give me strength to my bones and life to my limbs, may you make my flesh fresh completely with life. I know you, I know your names, I have not died, I have not grown poor, I have not gone blind, I have not become deaf. I am one of the deities, I know your names. We knew the names of these deities, we knew the names of the seven kasu, we knew the names of the sacred seven divinities of wisdom that organize the universe. We have all that knowledge and we invoke them on a regular basis. Okay. In Akan, there's a divinity called Brechiri Hunuwadie, which is a title of Tahuti. He's also called Abe. Question in the chat room. In fact, let me show you that real quick. Before we get back to the, so that's most of what the book is, and there's some other information. So basically, when you read the book, you download the book for free, you have a full understanding of what we're talking about in the book. But we wrote a book called Tahuti Sankofa Fa Ni Fa, and we're showing that the divinity Tahuti in Kemet, he's called Sankofa in Akan, he's Fa in Vodun, Ifa in Yoruba, and we show all of that. And we go through some information. Here's one of his titles, Bre Chini Huduatie, the all-knowing one. That's his title in Akan, a major title in Akan. But then there's a story about him, which is important. So the male, and we always showed the balance of the male and female. So Tahuti is the divinity of divine wisdom. But Seshat is the female divinity of divine wisdom. They're both holding notched palm branches. And we show the sacred palm tree has to do with wisdom. It is called Abe in Akan, and that's the name of Tahuti in Akan as well. And she is called Abrewa in Akan. So we show that Fa is the palm tree in Vodun, which is a divinity. We show that Tahuti and Seshat, Abe, the palm tree in Akan divination, is a divinity called Abe. And there's a story about Abe and divination and so forth, but that's him operant within the palm tree and so forth. He's called Fa, the palm tree in Vodun. And then in Yoruba, he is called, that's Seshat, of course, with the palm tree on her head, her headdress. And in Yoruba, Orunmila, the divinity of divine wisdom, is called Ifa. And in Ifa, palm nuts are used in divination and so forth. So we show all of that in that particular book. Another one of the books that we have that you can download for free from our website. In this final part of the book, we just show these original terms from Kemet. We already showed Karakara and all of that. Ki or Chi, the exalted one, the deity. Chi or Ki, you see the winged disc and so forth, the one high up. Ki or Kai or Chai, which is a variation of Chi. Chai, which is contracted into Chi. Exalted one, a title of Ra. Chai or Kai, but Ki or Chi, the exalted one, the divinity, the winged disc, solar disc, and so forth. But that, whether his name is Chai or Kai, or as Ki or Chi, this is where you get the notion of Chi being divine living energy, life force energy, and so forth. They stole that from our language, Ki or Chi. The life force energy comes from Ra and Ra'ed. That's why he's called Chi or Ki, the exalted one, the high one, the one operating through the sun and so forth. And then Pa Ra is a title of Ra, meaning the God. Ra means a definite article. Pa means the or the. It means the Ra or the God Ra. They'll say the sun, but it's the Ra. Para is the origin of Parana, which is the life force energy, because Pa also means flame, fire, or spark. So Prana, that's where that comes from. We also already show yoke. Yoke or yonk is Ankh, of course. Yonki or yoki, a living being, that becomes yogi. And then Female is yogini and so forth. But Ankh is also the name of a divinity. Ankit or Yonkit is the name of the deity. And then there's also Ankh or Yonk is the name of a male divinity as well, which is whites and offspring don't know about that. And then we also show the Ab, which is the term for heart, but it also means to dance, sacred movement. And when you look at these different forms of the man with the hands down and the arm up and the two arms down and then the two arms in the praise position and the hen symbol, all these different movements, if you look at them in sequence in the medutu, from this position to that position, this position to that position to that position, and keep going, all those movements in sequence are the same Tai Chi or Qigong movements that you see. So when you look in the book, you'll see that sequence of movements, which are called Ab, dance, perform gymnastics. In this context, dance. Ab means the heart, but it also means rhythmic movement. So it's also the term for dance or sacred movement and so forth. But all these movements you'll see show up in these Qigong and Tai Chi movements. So Ab is the heart. Ab also means to dance, but it means sacred movement. It also has to do with the, scarab beetle and so forth. And you have Keprit, the female divinity, and Kepra, the male divinity. We incorporate that in our book. And then we also show that the Akua in ancient Kemet is Nebuchadnezzar. And we go into some detail about that, and we show that the Akua Badal is the Ankh. There's a fertility function and a funerary function for the Akuaba. That's the funerary Akuaba. This is the funerary Akua and the fertility Akua. And the funerary Akua is the one without the arms and legs and so forth. It's the neck and the top of the head. And that is the same symbol for the headdress of Nebuchadnezzar, which you see on top of her head and so forth. So we just go into some detail about that. And we also show that when you have an Akua Badal, when they incorporate the Jed pillar, when you spin an Akua Badal around and look on the back of the head, you'll see the Jed pillar there as well. So we continue to use the same symbolism in the Akan tradition. Unbroken. Here's an Ankh symbol with arms and hands and so forth, same as the Akuaba. Ankit, the living one, the name of a goddess. And we just show a number of different things with regard to showing that Nebuchadnezzar is Akua in the Akan tradition. And then you have Ankh or Yonk, the son of Sapatit, form of Heru and so forth. That's a male divinity. And Ankit or Anket is a female divinity. So the Ankh or Yonk is a deity as well. There's a male deity called Ankh or Yonk or Yok, Yoga, Yonk. And there's a female divinity, Yonket, which they would say Yoga or Yoge or Yogini and so forth. But these are deities. You will never learn that in Hinduism, that yoga and yogit is a deity, because they don't know anything about that, because they stole the information. And of course, the Akuaba is representative of the tree, the hair of the person and so forth, the branches are the arms and so forth. That's what the Ankh symbol really is. So when people say that the Ankh symbol is the male principle is the phallus and the circle is the womb and so forth, that's never been accurate. People were just making things up because it seemed, plausible or deep or something. But in reality, the Onipadria, it is this symbol here. And when we go into detail about the cosmology, we know that. Plus the fact that most people who were saying that about the Ankh, they were accustomed to looking at things that the whites and offspring put forward, and then they never went further to investigate. Because if they did, and you travel to Kemet and so forth, you will see many anthropomorphic Ankhs with the arms and legs and hands and feet and so forth. That's very common because Ankh is actually a deity as well. Ankh is a male divinity, ANKH is a female divinity, and that ANKH, female divinity, is Akua, that is Nebuchadnezzar. So you'll see it's a full structure. It's not the union of the male and female principle. All right. Okay, there's a question in the chat room. Are dark-skinned Indians with the long, straight hair our people? It depends on who you're looking at. There are black people in India who are direct descendants and are our people, but then you have other ones who are, they can be from tan skin to brown skin or even a little bit darker with straight hair, and they're directly descendant of the whites who invaded, and those whites invaded and raped their blood into, you know, the original black population, and they, you know, give birth to a mulatto individuals. Then those mulatto individuals, you know, copulate, and then they give birth to other mulattoes, and they get a little bit browner and so forth. Then the spirits of those whites who have made it, you know, generations before incarnate through those mulatto children, and they're born into the world. They come out and they have light brown skin, and they have dark, straight to wavy hair. And some of them are tan, some of them are a little bit darker, but they're not our people at all. They are the descendants spiritually returning these white invaders who have reincarnated through the ones that they, you know, brought into the world. So, but it's the same thing also when you have a white individual and a black individual on the continent, and somebody foolishly copulated, for example, if they were in Nigeria and copulated with a white English woman and so forth, when they give birth to a child and it's a mulatto child, the spirit either comes from, is an ancestor from the Nigerian person, like if it was a Yoruba person, it's either one of his Yoruba ancestors or ancestors who went through the womb and came back and they're a light brown individual, then that's one of our people. But if the spirit that was drawn into that womb came from one of the white relatives of that white English female from 100 years ago, and that white spirit enters into the womb and is born as a light-skinned mulatto-looking person, looking like, you know, Kamala Harris or something like that, that is the spirit of a white spirit of disorder that's masquerading as a light brown individual, and that is not one of our people. It doesn't matter how much melanin they have. They're the spirit of disorder from one of the whites in our offspring operating through the body of a mulatto individual. So we always, whenever someone, you know, has children, we find out what is the provenance of the spirit. Does it come from the mother's side or the father's side? It is an ancestor of the mother or ancestress of the mother or an ancestor or ancestress of the father. We do that within the black population. What side of the family, just to know what side of the family, what ancestors returning, what ancestress is returning. We always do that just to know, you know, how we are to deal with the person. But especially if someone makes the foolish, you know, mistake of copulating with a non-black individual, and then you see a child is born, we already know either the child came from the black side as a black ancestor from 200 years ago that returned, then that's one of our people who was forced into a mulatto body, and now for the first time in millennia, they're walking around in a mulatto body. They're an ancient black ancestor or black ancestors who's forced to walk around in a mulatto body and forced to have a quote-unquote white mother, but that's not really their real mother. They're an ancestor who was watching over this black person who is now their father. They've been watching over him since he was a baby, and then when he grew up and copulated with this person, he drew that spirit into the world. But if it was one of the relatives of the white individual and pulled one of her people into the world for the first time in 150 years, this white spirit has returned, this white English person from 150 years ago is drawn into the womb. They're going to operate through a brown body, but that's a spirit of disorder. It's one of the whites in their offspring. That's not one of our people. And no amount of melanin is going to make them one of our people. So when we talk about race, and we did a whole 6-week course on res, It's on the site. We talk about that difference. The difference between non-Black individuals and us is not just physiological. Our spirit bodies, our sahu, we have a ka, the soul of divine consciousness and divinity in the head region. Non-Black individuals don't have that. Whether they're Hindus, Arabs, Latinos, Hispanics, Asians, and so forth, of course, white Europeans, white Americans, Canadians, and so forth, Spanish, they don't have the divinity that governs the head. Only Black people have that. So that's the difference with regard to us spiritually, spirit-genetically. So it doesn't matter if someone copulates with a non-Black individual, if they bring back an ancient Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestor or ancestress, that's one of our people. If they pull one of those white spirits, a spirit that doesn't have a Kra, soul, divine consciousness, one of the white individuals from previous generations, they're operating through a brown body, but they are not one of us. And no amount of melanin is going to make them one of us because it's not going to give them a divinity that governs the head. It's not even possible. So we know the difference, and we've always known that in our culture. People who are clairvoyant know. We do divination to find out who is this individual. Some of our people today are fools. So when they see somebody who's a mulatto and they, try to act Black or cool, and we just assume, oh, they're one of us. If they're a mulatto, they're one of us. No, they're not. Some of them are, and some of them are not. So, and only we can tell the difference. So we don't allow the whites and offspring to define race like, oh, if it's the one drop rule, if they got one drop of Black blood, they must be us. Absolutely not. The question, the ancestral spirit has no choice but to come, was wondering if they could choose from the spirit realm. So basically, they choose by the way that they conducted themselves in their previous existence, which is very important. So you're living in harmony with divine order when you're living on earth. Then you become an ancestor or ancestress, and you're in the ancestral realm for a couple of hundred years, and it's time for you to, return. You can be drawn into the branch of the family that's still upholding culture and is still, high vibrational and so forth. Or if you lived a self-destructive life and you were alcoholic or drug addict or criminal or whatever you were and so forth, and you're still operating on that negative vibrational frequency, then you can be drawn into a weak branch of the family where you have weak individuals who are drug users or self-destructive or ignorant and never tried to do anything productive and so forth. Like the kind of person who will connect with one of the whites and offspring, and you get drawn into that because you're weak spiritually because you never cultivated yourself when you were here previously or in the spirit realm. So you make your decision based on how you, function in the world and in the spirit realm previously. But this notion of, oh, we choose, everybody chooses their, incarnation before birth, and that's not accurate either. It depends on how you functioned in your incarnation, the recent one, and the one even previous to that. It's accumulation of how you've been functioning in multiple incarnations that lead you into a certain direction. Just like in life, if you spent your 20 years, as a drug addict or doing something crazy, and then you put yourself in position to come in contact with certain kinds of people, then that's because of all the series of behaviors and activities you engaged in that led you to that point. Same thing spiritually, the kind of things that you were doing and kind of imprints that left on your spirit body, the kind of things that you're drawn to or repelled from based on the structure of your spirit, how weak or strong it is. It's accumulation of everything that you've been doing. So the way you operate, if you live in harmony with divine order or not, or if you purify yourself or not, that leads you to different places. All right. Okay, so we want to go ahead and end it now because we went beyond the time frame that we wanted to get to and so forth. Let me just show you our web link. So some of you are, that we have our upcoming Susu meditation instructor certification coming up on August 5th. And that's the trailer for that. So we will, we're finishing up a course right now, but it's a 4-week online course. You can be certified as a meditation instructor. We call it Susu, which is the ancient term for meditation. And once you have your certification after the 4-week course, you can take that certification for self-employment. You can conduct Susu or meditation sessions in schools, places of business, community organizations, women's shelters, a number of different places. And people pay between $100, $200, $300 for you to come out and do a 30-minute session to enhance learning outcomes with youth or to enhance productivity at work for people, places of business, to lessen depression, anxiety. So basic 20-minute, 30-minute, or 40-minute sessions. That's what people pay for. So they typically look for a credential. So you learn, about the culture and cosmology and so forth. But we introduce these practices in an introductory fashion. So taking, you through a 10-minute meditation session like you see here, in many schools do that now, to help with behavior with children, to make them more focused, 10 or 15-minute session. After school programs, shelters for women or families and so forth, drug addiction, group therapy sessions, community organizations, or if they have a cultural event and they have somebody do a meditation session, we show how, the various benefits of meditation can impact us in a positive capacity. So you can get paid, when you have that that certification. So that's why we put forward the certification course. And we've been teaching, we've been teaching meditation for over 20 years. We published on it for the first time 20 years ago. And we've been teaching that, youth as well as adults for the past 20 years. But this is the first time we did a certification course. We've taught just that practice, just in general. But for people to get a certification course, instead of our people having to go to some other center, spending thousands of dollars or $1,000 or something to learn some Hindu approach to meditation or some Buddhist approach to meditation or some pseudo-white New Age approach to meditation and so forth, and having to pay them to get a small percentage of accurate information and a large percentage of misinformation. We need to get that through our own people, and then you utilize that certification to employ yourself. And some people do it part-time, have a couple of places they go once per week, an after-school program or a business, do a couple of sessions per week and make $200 or $300, $400 a week. Or some people set up something once a day for 3 or 4 days or 4 or 5 days, and they go to different places, a different place each day, and generate $100 or $200 or $300 a day, and then they make that a business, full-time employment. So it just depends on how you want to conduct that. So the next course is coming up August 5th. So you can register for that. And all of the information is on the site, the Susu site. And we also have done a number of lives, but two of them, talking about the referral fee, as you can see here. You can receive a referral fee, a $100 referral fee, if you refer someone to our course and they register for the course. Once they pay the registration fee, then we'll PayPal you or Cash App you $100 referral fee for sending someone to us. If you're not ready to take the course yet, you can still do the referral fee. Just recommend the course to people, send them to our page. Once they register and they pay for the registration, we will send you the referral fee immediately as a way of saying, "Yedase," thank you for sending someone. The only stipulation is, of course, we only teach Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people. So we don't teach non-Black people meditation or anything. All of our courses are for our people only. So that's the only stipulation. All right. So that is that information. Okay. Okay. So once again, yet I'll say we thank everybody for tuning in, joining in with us. Check out the various, we have our 31 books you can download for free. We have 40 online courses that you can access the archives from. We have the certification course, our 2 documentary films. So the HOODOO film that we just released in October is on our page right now. You can watch that for free. Our first documentary film that we also won an award for Best Original Documentary at the Film Festival in New York. We were also entered in the Film Festival in California, where we went out to speak and so forth. That film is accessible. You'll see the link, the trailers. You can purchase that film for $11.11 and so forth. That's on the site. So you'll see all of that information here on this page. But the link for the Susu meditation instructor certification course is in the description for this video. Also, if you want to know when we're going to go live, like and subscribe. So click like here, but also subscribe and click the notification bell. So when you look on YouTube, you have the subscribe, button, of course, but then the notification bell. So when we post something, we don't have a set schedule of going live, but there are certain days we do go live. You can click the notification bell and subscribe, and therefore you'll know whenever we're going live. You get a notification in advance so you can check it out. Okay. So once again, I'll say we thank you for joining in with us. And Gebeshabio, we will meet again. That's it.